Hi, I'm Jenna Larrick, and the scenario I'm going to be presenting on today is a student asking the following question. Can you divide a fractional number by dividing the numerator of the top fraction by the numerator of the bottom fraction, and likewise for the denominators? So it gives the example 4 over 9 divided by 2/3, which then gives you, if you divide straight across, 14 divided by 2 over 9 divided by 3. So 14 divided by 2 gives you 7, 9 divided by 3 gives you 3, for an answer of 7/3. So obviously it works for this question, but the question is, does it work for all fractions? So can you divide fractional numbers in this way, all of them? I actually found this question very interesting because I honestly didn't know the answer. My entire academic career, I've just been told to multiply by the reciprocal, and that's just been what I've been doing. So I have a good understanding of why multiplying by the reciprocal works, but I didn't know why we couldn't just divide straight across. So I was interested to find out. So before I begin, here are the Ohio Math Content Standards that match this question. So as you can see, this is most likely a 6th or 7th grade question because it matches most of the 6th and 7th grade standards. So I think the standard that most matches this problem is the middle one right here. Apply and extend previous understandings of multiplication and division and of fractions to multiply and divide rational numbers. I think it best matches this standard because we're taking into consideration, what we've previously learned about dividing and what it means to divide, and we're putting that in an equation form. Whereas the 6th grade standard before that is more concrete and using visual models to do so. So the short answer to the question of can we just divide straight across is yes, we can, but only in certain cases. So in our original example, we have 14 over 9 divided by 2/3 equals 14 divided by 2 over 9 over 3, which equals 7/3. This is pretty easy to see because 14 is divisible by 2 and 9 is divisible by 3. But let's say we have something like 13 over 9 divided by 2/3. 13 divided by 2 is where it gets a little messy because 13 isn't divisible by 2. We would have a fraction within our fraction or a decimal within our fraction, which we can't have. It would make things very complicated. So this shows that we can do it, but there are certain cases where it might not be the best way to do it. So in order for a teacher to teach this concept to their students, they would have to know these two pretty big concepts. So why do we multiply by the reciprocal? That is, why does it work? How does it work? And why is dividing straight across the same thing or equivalent to multiplying by the reciprocal? So it's pretty important for a teacher to know these things because if they don't have the knowledge of why and how it works, they're not going to be able to clearly explain it to their students, and then their students won't fully understand either. So the first thing we want to know is, why does multiplying by the reciprocal work? So I did this short proof here. I rewrote a over b divided by c over d as a over b all over c over d. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get rid of that fraction on the bottom. As you know, multiplying by the reciprocal gives you 1. Multiplying a number by its reciprocal gives you 1. So I multiplied the bottom by d over c, which is the reciprocal of c over d. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top in order to keep the expression the same. So I multiplied the top also by d over c. That ended up giving me 1 on the bottom and a over b times d over c on the top. That can be simplified to AD over BC on the top and 1 on the bottom, which then a number divided by 1 is itself, which gives you AD over BC, which would be the same as if you just multiplied by the reciprocal to begin with. So as you can see, multiplying by the reciprocal is equivalent to dividing by the original numbers. So now that we know that multiplying by the reciprocal works, we want to know if dividing straight across would be the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I did this second little proof here, and I have a over b divided by c over d. The first thing I did was multiply by the reciprocal. So I have a over b times d over c, which then simplifies to ad over bc, which then can be rewritten and is equivalent to a over c divided by b over d. If you rewrite that, that's a divided by c over b divided by d, which, as you can see, looks the same as if you had just divided straight across right in the beginning. So this shows that dividing straight across is the same thing, is equivalent to multiplying by the reciprocal, and both can be used to solve for dividing fractions. So now I'm going to go into what I would do if a student approached me and asked this question. So the first thing I would do is state that yes, we can do it, and then give them a few examples. I got these examples right here from an NCTM article where a teacher talked about teaching this to your students, and this is how the author kind of eased them into it. So as you can see, she has 2 over 3 divided by 2 over 3, which if you did it straight across would give you 2 divided by 2 over 3 divided by 3, which would give you 1 over 1, which then gives you 1. That's pretty easy for the students to see and for them to see that it's true because they know that a number divided by itself is 1. The next one gets a little bit more difficult. 2 divided by 1, which is 2, over 3 divided by 3, which is 1, which gives you 2 over 1, which still pretty easy for the students to see and see why it's true. The third one is a little more difficult than that. It's 4 divided by 3, which isn't an even, it doesn't give you an even number. So it'll give you 4/3, but then it's over 5 divided by 5, which we know is 1. So if we have 4/3 over 1, that's just 4/3. So that's a little bit trickier, but the students can get there. The last one, though, gives you 4 divided by 1 over 5 divided by 2. 4 divided by 1 is pretty easy, just 4. But then the 5 divided by 2 is where it gets hard, because you will end up with either a decimal or a fraction in the denominator, and the student's going to see this and get stuck. They're not going to know what to do. This is where you can come in and explain that multiplying by the reciprocal is another way to do it, and is sometimes the easier way to approach a division by fractions problem. So I would then introduce multiplying by the reciprocal by starting with something easy, like dividing by 1/2 is the same thing as multiplying by 2. So the example I gave here is if you divide 4 cups of sugar into 1/2 cup servings, you'll get 8 servings. And for something like this, if I were doing a lesson with a student, I would maybe even give them, the cups of sugar or whatever you want to actually divide and see that their amount of servings doubles. So they see that 4 divided by 1/2 is 8, and that's the same thing as doing 4 times 2 over 1, which is just 2, equals 8. So then after something like this, I would just give my students a few more examples to have them practice it and really understand it before going into which method of division they would use for certain problems. So that goes into my follow-up problems. This is what I would give the student to kind of see where they're at in their thinking. So I said, which method of dividing fractions would you use for these problems? I gave them 7 over 8 divided by 1 over 3, and 7 over 8 divided by 1 over 4. Now the student should see that in the first one, 8 is not divisible by 3, so they should probably do multiplying by the reciprocal here. The second one, they should see that it's really easy just to multiply straight across and do 7 divided by 1 is 7, and 8 divided by 4 is 2, to get 7/2. This follow-up problem shouldn't just only tell you what your students know and if they know how to do both ways of dividing, but can also tell you which ways they prefer. A student might look at the second problem and say, I like multiplying by the reciprocal, so I'm going to do it that way. So it'll really show you where students are at in their thinking. So here are my resources. The first one is a book about how American teachers choose to teach dividing by fractions and division in general. And the second one is that NCTM article I mentioned earlier about how you should ease your students into learning how to multiply by the reciprocal so they actually understand it. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and thank you for watching.